is a great noir boxing classic. Do you notice the beginning? It's like super noir-y beginning with like the splashes of like the city, right? And it just the angles are really it's totally
Yeah,
like a
I did.
noir
Yeah,
beginning.
talk about that a little bit because I wasn't sure what you meant by the noir opening.
Well, yeah,
To
it's exactly like it just screams crime drama, right? Like
Yeah,
it's the whole thing is um yeah, it's not an opening like a sports movie, basically, right? It sets it up for which it's basically it's basically about corruption, and that's
yeah,
kind of what you're getting from the beginning,
yes.
right?
Of course, we're talking
Yeah,
about
I
The
thought,
Harder They Fall, the classic Humphrey
oh
Bogart
yes,
one, and it was the last. It was his last movie.
yeah, yeah, and there were parts where he apparently couldn't finish. He had to go back in and do rereads, and apparently he would always finish at like 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Cocktail hour. But this was the one movie where he would go back in, and the other actors weren't really sure why, and it turns out later they realized, oh, like he was dying at this point. Nobody really knew that he was dying. And
Yeah,
so yeah, apparently was in quite a bit of pain and struggling. And if you notice, his lips look really sort of moist throughout, and he does look a little bit haggard, like his eyes look a little off. But maybe it's just because I know that and I'm looking for it.
yeah. I think he hit it really well because honestly, I'd be very hard pressed to say, "Oh yeah, you could tell he was on his last legs," because they said like he would have to go in because his eyes were too watery apparently, and that was
Yeah,
because his he was in such pain. He had a soft, how do you say it, esophageal
esophagus
cancer,
cancer. Yeah, yeah,
and presumably from smoking like a chimney, I assume.
yeah, yeah. So
Right?
it's cool too watching his acting in this one because it should be his best acting. It's his last movie, but he's
Mhm.
also sort of vis-a-vis Rod Steiger, who is doing method acting, and Bogart is doing this classic acting, and this movie's famous for this sort of clash of styles, right?
Mhm.
And Bogart's got this sort of make it look easy delivery. And
Yes.
Steiger is just like, he's like kinetic and he's like screaming his head off. And apparently, Bogart was really sort of amused by this, right? He would bring his buddies in to watch Steiger preparing. So I guess Steiger would be in the corner, like, getting to the zone. And he just thought this was hilarious, hilariously strange. But
Yes.
I think it works. Like, Steiger's performance is amazing. I love him in everything he's in.
Yeah.
But Bogart does make it look easy. Like he's very effective, and I was really paying attention to his acting. He's a really good actor. Like he
Yeah.
he he really is a great actor.
Yeah, he really is. Now, Steiger, he isn't known kind of famously as a method actor. And Brando, I guess, would have had his breakout with On the Waterfront in 54,
Yeah,
probably.
which Steiger's in that as well. I really like him in that
Oh,
as his
yes, that's
brother.
right. I forgot. Yeah.
So the two of them would be, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There was a famous movie coach from New York that is like the school is from, right? And these
hmm
guys studied with him, and I don't know if Steiger was one of them, but
hmm
this was around the time that this was starting, this method acting,
Yes.
and and this is sort of this movie where the two styles, I guess, really pinnacles of the two styles are clashing together. It's not
Yeah.
like I noticed, if you didn't know that, you wouldn't really notice it. Like I think they just blend. It just blends well together. I think the
hmm
way they like that character just fits, Rod Steiger's character. It
Yes.
reminds me of another character it's a movie with Jack Palance. I think it's called The Knife or something with a knife in it, and he plays a producer, and he's almost the same character. Like it's
Oh,
just this over the top, screaming his head off, like just complete a-hole. All he cares about is, himself.
yeah.
Um, he's just the epitome of this racket, right? Like it's just a horrible racket.
Yeah.
This innocent lamb, this giant lamb rolls into Toro Moreno, right? So the movie, just to give a synopsis. So I guess Bogart is um, not a
He's an out
failing,
of
but he's
work.
an out of
He's
work. Yeah.
out of work press. Like, he's an out of work promoter, I would say. I
Yeah.
don't know if
Well, no,
that's his
he he's
exact
a
term.
he's a sports writer, and so he wants him. So Rod Steiger wants him to promote this new find that they a boxer that they found in Argentina.
Yeah.
So the story is that they went around to, I guess, carnivals, and they found this guy who was a strong man, and he comes back, and in the first meeting where Bogart is set up to meet this giant, and he's really set up to look like a giant. He walks out, he hits his head on the light,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
He's humongous.
He
I
is a
think
big
he's a
guy.
wrestler. He's
Yeah.
he's a wrestler from New York, and
Oh,
what's his name here? Yeah, I wrote his name down. Um, so yeah, Mike Lane. So they did a worldwide talent search, which was this gimmick they used to do, and basically found the guy around the corner.
yeah.
But yeah, so in this, it turns out that he can't box at all, right? He's got a glass jaw, he's got a powder puff punch,
Yeah.
and Steiger recruits Bogart to basically promote this guy, and they're going to have him win all these fights and have these
By
other people
fixing
take
them.
dives,
Yeah.
and he has no idea, right?
Yeah.
And he thinks he's beating all these guys, and then it culminates in a fight with a guy who won't take a dive, right?
Yeah.
Who's played
Which
brilliantly,
happens to
that
be the
actor,
world
right?
champ.
That's right.
Yeah.
And who's got a grudge, right? A really bad grudge.
Yeah.
Because and it's hilarious why he has the grudge, because he's angry that the guy that Toro ends up killing in the ring, he's angry that he's like, no, I'm the guy who killed him, right? And he
Yes.
wants the
Yeah.
cred for killing the guy, which is a horrible, like, that
Yeah.
scene where they like basically talk that guy into fighting, right? So his name is Gus
Yes.
Dundee, and
Yes. That's
he's
right.
been really injured in a fight with that heavyweight that he fights at the end. What's his name? His name is Buddy Brennan, right?
Yeah.
So Buddy Brennan basically almost kills this guy in the ring, and
Hmm.
then I guess maybe it's his very next fight, they talk him into going in the ring with Toro, even though like you can tell in that conversation that he's very injured
Yeah.
and he shouldn't be boxing at all. And
Yeah.
and and this is a scene where Steiger's character is really just totally callous, doesn't
Yeah.
care at all, really, just wants to make money, right?
Yeah.
And couldn't care less if this guy's gonna die in the ring.
Yeah.
And then he does end up dying in the ring, and the guy who actually feels like he did the damage now, is going to go up against Toro.
Yeah.
And I guess at this point, Toro finds out that, yeah, okay, Bogart tells him, all these guys have been taking dives. You can't
Hmm.
you
You can't
can't fight at
actually fight.
all,
Yeah.
and now you're going to go up against this bruiser, right? And then they
Yeah.
they go toe to toe, and it's a great ending. I really like the way it
Yeah.
ends,
Yeah. The
right?
boxing scenes were known for their brutality, at least for the time.
Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know.
all those guys except for Toro are real boxers, right?
Oh.
And yeah, and the real crazy story is they boxed, like the guy who died in the film. He
Hmm.
boxed the guy that was the heavyweight. So Buddy and uh, Gus actually had a real fight. The actors who
Oh.
played them, right? And it was a heavyweight fight. I think the guy who played Buddy, who was the actual heavyweight, in the
Yeah.
movie, in the last fight, he won that fight. But there's another thing where a fighter died because of that same actor. The boxer in real life beat a guy really badly, who then died in another fight. And so it's totally mimics real life.
Wow.
It's just there's a few other names in there, right? And in fact, the movie was sued by one of these guys. His name was Primo Carnera. So he was a real fighter who killed this guy in the ring, but it turns out it was because this other boxer who is the actor
Oh, wow.
actually did the damage. Yeah, it's amazing, right? And so this guy ended up suing the movie, and it was thrown out because he said it was basically,
Based on
mimicking
his
his.
life or whatever.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
yeah, and the writer Budd Schulberg, like he did in fact take these stories and sort of mix them up in this sort of story he wanted to tell about the corruption in boxing.
Yeah.
which I think it really works because, up until that, it's really just, these guys are making money. But,
Yeah.
when you see the death and the interview with that other, that guy from Skid Row, that boxer who's really like messed up and he doesn't really know where he is and he can't find a
Yeah.
job. And that's also a real boxer. And it's a real unscripted interview with that guy.
Oh,
And so
really? Oh,
you get this realism, which for me makes it so much more brutal,
yeah.
that it's real life and these people are
Yeah.
actually dying. And
Yeah.
the promoters are real douchebags,
Yeah.
and they really don't care about it's like they're animals, it's like they're racehorses, right?
Yeah.
They treat them worse than they would treat racehorses.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
It's
that
brutal, yeah.
it was based on a novel, wasn't it, from
Yeah,
1949, I think, which was supposed
yeah,
to,
yeah,
I think, be an expose of the boxing, much as this comes
yeah,
across as being um it's probably the earliest, maybe one of the earliest instances of a movie being fictional but being essentially an expose of
yeah, yeah,
something
yeah,
that's
yeah.
actually going on. I don't know. It'd be hard to quantify exactly what the first instance of that would be, but it certainly was rooted in real life, and there was a lot of
Yeah. And
it
there were
felt biographical, even if it wasn't.
two different endings. So the ending that I think was there until the 60s had Bogart saying that like he was gonna try to have the sport abolished. But the author Schulberg, who wrote the novel, he really loved boxing. He just hated
Yeah.
the corruption of boxing. And
Mm.
so they had filmed two different endings, and he had lobbied until the 60s to get the ending that we now see in the movie, where Bogart basically says he's going to have it reformed,
Yes.
even if it takes an act of Congress.
Yes.
So the original ending was having it abolished, but
Wow.
they switched it to having it reformed instead,
Yeah.
which is which
Yeah.
is pretty funny.
Now, overall, like, what did you like best about the movie, or what stood out to you with this film?
I think it's the the interactions between Steiger and Bogart is probably what I love
Yes.
most about this movie. I think if you take those two actors out and it's still a great film. Like it's still a great, critique. It's still a great, expose. Because as an expose, it seems like realistic. Like you could see
Yeah.
this totally happening, right? Like you
Yeah.
go and you find this schmo from Argentina, you just hype him up. They have that bus where they drive
Yes.
around, right? And so people get excited and they'll go. Like you could totally see how this happens, right?
Yeah.
Um, but those two guys, those two actors, I think take the movie to the next level.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I like most about it. And I watched it a few times for this, and probably would have gotten a bit sick of it, but I was just always captivated by their interactions,
Yes.
and um, yeah, I knowing it's Bogart's last film, kind of I paid a little bit more attention to his
Mhm.
acting, which I never did before. I thought, what, he's a really good actor. Because normally I would have paid more attention to Rod Steiger. Like I don't know, he's just drawn to him more,
Yes.
right? But Bogart does a lot with less, kind of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He has a lot of sort of presence without being loud on the screen, and he's
No.
he's a really small person when you when you look at him, right?
Yeah.
He's quite tiny, but
Yeah.
he's got big presence, and
Oh, he
yeah,
does.
it's
Yes.
hard to explain, but that's
The
what I like. What
movie
about
for
yourself?
me, well, I love the interaction. I thought Steiger was such a great bad guy. You know, he almost overshadowed Bogart in a way with
Yeah.
how relentlessly awful he is the whole movie. So they were both highlights. So, and actually I liked the interaction with Bogart and his wife. I thought that was kind of another, it didn't have the
Yes.
same level of importance, but I think she's the moral compass of the film.
Yeah.
And so
It
at the
wasn't just
end,
some side story that they put in often, right? Like it was important because she was a moral judgment on him throughout the movie, right? Yeah.
yes. Yeah, and and when he wasn't living up to the standard, then
Yeah.
she was the one that came in and really reminded him of where the true north was. So, but I would say it was interesting. The biggest thing that stood out to me was the cynicism of the movie, though. That was,
Yes.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
liked it or it's just there, and it's just like it's such a cynical movie.
Yeah.
Everyone is on the take. Everyone is awful. You know.
And it's not hidden at all. Like the way those managers were talking, like,
Yep.
yeah, those boxers, they're dirt, they're scum.
Yeah.
When Rod Steiger's talking to Bogart's wife, he's basically telling her, don't go out west to meet with him, right? And
Yeah.
he's just brutally frank, you're just gonna ruin everything. It's like no attempt to finesse anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just
But it's
brutal.
a pretty relentlessly cynical movie in many ways. Like I think it has to be, or at least that's the tone that the director wanted to strike. But it's pretty relentlessly cynical, and until the end anyway, when there's a little bit of
Yes.
reprieve.
Even
Yeah.
Bogart is not, she's not just the moral guy in it. Like there's a part where he sort of gets to take over. Something goes wrong, and Rod Steiger's like, "Okay, you take over."
Yes.
He gets this look on his face, like he really wants this. It's like he's right in there.
Yeah.
And every time he kind of makes the wrong decision every time, right? Until the end, and
Mhm.
but yeah, he goes along with it, knowing full well that this is a lie, right? Like
Oh yeah.
he's right in there right to the end.
It's almost like he tries to be one of them. He tries to be one of the guys that's just in it for the money and that kind of thing, but he just can't quite let himself let himself do that.
Yeah, or he's the only one who sees, he's being corrupted, but he's the only one who sees the corruption, right? To
Yeah.
these guys, it's just a business, and at the end, when they tally up the money
Yeah.
that Toro's going to get, and they just go through this, talk about cynical, all these
Yeah.
bullshit
Yeah. Yeah.
charges, right? Like,
Yeah.
so basically, it gets no money. Like, it's just,
Yeah.
and it's just brutal. Like, how many people have gone through that, you think, and it's have had the shit beat out of them and had brain damage and walk away with lots of
Yeah.
promises probably and get very little,
Yeah. Yeah.
got nothing to show for it. Like it's just yeah, it's brutal. And
Yeah.
it seems like it was even more brutal back then. Like I don't know, do you think that it would be more brutal today, the sport, or more corrupt back
I
then? I guess
mean, I think
corrupt.
there's much more of awareness about concussions and that sort of thing now, for sure. But
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, who knows? I mean, we're
because
we're
Don
pre-
King certainly seemed pretty corrupt. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I mean at the moment, here we are in late August of 2024, and we're awaiting the potential bout between YouTuber Jake Paul and Mike Tyson,
Oh
which is
wow.
a pure money grab,
Yeah,
basically. And so that's so maybe it's still kind of part of the deal. It's still part of
I think so. Yeah,
the thing. And
I
so we like
maybe
to think we're
maybe
more
when
progressive and we've come a long
yeah,
way, but maybe we really haven't.
and the basic thing that's going on, it's just two guys beating the hell out of each other.
Yeah,
So like, how progressive is it going to get?
yeah,
How
exactly.
progressive should it get? Maybe it should just be corrupt and like it's two guys beating the hell out of each other when you think about it.
Yeah, yeah,
And basically for money. Like that's really
yeah,
like it's not that much of a sport. It's mainly a money thing, right? Like it's the gambling and all that
yeah.
behind it that
Sure.
has always made the sport. And
That's
then,
yeah,
the dives and stuff, it's probably been a sport that has had more people, purposely lose than maybe any other sport,
yeah.
like
Well,
it
yeah,
would
it's
be
tough
so
to
easy to do, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, because and famously, there's the battle between Muhammad Ali and was it Sonny Liston, where they talk about Muhammad Ali's ghost punch, where he punches him, but
Uh,
it seems weak, and Liston goes down, and he was a tough, tough dude. And for
Yeah.
him to go down that easily seemed very, very suspicious. But Ali always maintained it was a completely, legitimate hit,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's just the camera angle's bad, and you caught him with his own
Yeah.
Liston's momentum, and so who knows, it's there may be some really even high profile instances of boxers taking a dive, right? So
Yeah. Well, I like that aspect in the film where there were a few of them who didn't want to take the dive. There was the
yeah,
native guy who, it turns out for a decent reason. Like his whole
yeah,
family was there, and he didn't want to go take a dive.
yeah.
I think that what was the solution? Like
He's
it went a
as
bit
long as
longer or
he
something, or
no
oh
no
no, he blood in his mouth
Bogart
or something. Yeah,
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 Bogart put a bit of chicken wire in his mouth,
that's right.
so when he
Yeah,
got hit in the face, it would cut him, and he'd be able to
yeah,
leave the fight with honor, instead of
yeah.
being
Yeah.
knocked out. Or he
The
didn't
blood
have to
would, I
take a
think,
dive.
it gets it. Yeah, he get eliminated or something as soon as there's blood or something. Yeah, and then there was another guy who refused. The first guy, like he just his name was Sailor. So I remember he was the champion of the Pacific Fleet. They said,
Yeah,
and he
yeah,
he was just like, no, this guy is. I can take this guy, and he just refused. And then they put something in his towel and rubbed it in, like his own trainer, and then
yes,
rubbed it in his face.
yeah,
And then as soon as he got like a little bit punched, he threw in the towel.
yeah.
And he's like tried to kick the towel
Pepper
out.
spray.
It's hilarious. So funny. Yeah.
That's
And that
awesome.
that actually that's where it starts to go sour for them because then I guess that fight gets investigated, right? Because
Yes,
it is actually such a sham and it almost sort of goes awry right from the start
yeah,
with this scam. I don't know
yeah.
how many he must have had quite a lot of fights like that. Like, he to get from nowhere to the heavyweight. I don't know how many fights was it that he had? Like it's sort of a
I,
montage, isn't it, that he
it was
goes
like
through?
20 something, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a fair number.
That's a lot of
Yeah.
fights to not know you suck.
I know, but you know what? If you're a big dude and you punch people and they go down, and you
Yeah, I
assume
guess.
you're punching as hard as you can,
Yeah.
it's kind of. I mean, I guess that might be the only maybe aspect of the movie that doesn't seem that believable is that Toro would be
Hmm.
that clueless,
Yeah.
and
And
his
at the end where
trainer.
he's like, "Oh, I don't want to punch you because I'm gonna kill you,"
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
He's
and
like,
his
"No, no, no, you
trainer.
can't."
His trainer is like, believes in him 100% as well,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
I felt bad for the
maybe.
trainer. He was really manhandled by Steiger's men. Really,
Yes.
they really treated him like a kid. They're like
Yeah.
screaming at him the whole time, and he seemed like such a nice guy.
Yeah.
I felt bad for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, these
So
two
so
guys,
what's that?
these two poor guys from Argentina.
Yeah.
They come
Yeah.
up and just have a just a bad experience.
Yes. So
Oh
would you
man.
say would this be on your list of 1,000 movies before you die? Like, what's the final
Yeah,
verdict?
I think this would be in the 100. I think it would
Yeah.
probably be in the 50,
Yeah.
maybe 25, but that's a tough one. But
Yep.
for 50 for sure, I think, because I really like it.
Yeah. It's
I
it's an excellent movie. I don't know if it's necessarily top 100, but it's up there like top quarter, top 25th percentile for sure. It's
Yeah,
really, really good. And yeah, Steiger's excellent, Bogart's excellent, and yeah, it's a very well made film, and it it moves along at a reasonable pace. It's like everything, it's a very competently made film. No
yeah,
complaints about
exactly.
it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I don't think it drags at any point. There's another movie with the to call it the setup. Um,
yes, and that we're gonna cover
it's
that one soon.
Yeah, that one is the boxing scenes are a little longer. I found these ones they're a little clippy, they're a little better, like they're a little bit quicker.
Yep.
They're not as long. I found that it never really there's no scene that sort of dragged or anything. Yeah, I
No,
thought it
no.
really clipped along well.
Yeah. No, that's
So
great. So
yes, I think highly recommend.
the harder
Um
they
from
fall.
Yeah, for me in the I would say top 50,
Yeah.
definitely.
Excellent. All right, well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you here next time on 1,000 Movies Before You Die.